Hiroshima and Nagasaki, World War II. During the time of 1941 and 1945, a project to build an atomic bomb called the Manhattan Project was being worked on. The US President at the time was Harry S. Truman. On July 16, 1945, this bomb was successfully tested in New Mexico. The bombing of Hiroshima was the world's first dropping of an atomic bomb. On the 6th of August 1945, an American B-29 bomber wiped out nearly 80% of Hiroshima. The bombing was known as Little Boy and killed 90,000 to 160,000 people from the time of dropping of the bomb till 4 months after. The Japanese kept fighting in the war, even after the Allied powers had defeated Germany. In late July, Japan's militarist government rejected the Allied demand for surrender put forth in the Potsdam Declaration, which threatened the Japanese with prompt and utter destruction if they refused. The devastation from Hiroshima didn't bring immediate surrender from the Japanese as hoped by the United States. Instead, on August the 9th, another atomic bomb was dropped, this time on the city of Nagasaki. Noon August 15th, Japanese time, the Emperor announced Japan's surrender. The bombing of Hiroshima is an important part of World War II because it is what brought the end of World War II. Germany had already surrendered before the attacks on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The President of the US had sent warnings to Japan about utter destruction of the country and the people if it did not surrender. However, Japan chose to keep fighting. The messages sent from the nuclear attacks on the war are: the nuclear bomb sent a worldwide message to the world about the destruction they can do. This started the nuclear war race and the age of weapons of mass destruction. Although no countries have used these nuclear mass destructors, many have these in their arsenal for use. Significance of the bombings. How did they change the war? The bombings are extremely significant, as they are what concluded World War II. The atomic bomb was not dropped just to show dominance. It had events leading up to it that could have changed how history is today. Before the first bomb was dropped, US President had asked Japan to surrender unconditionally, otherwise there would be prompt and utter destruction of Japan and their people. The government refused. After the first bomb, President Truman called for surrender again, giving the Japanese a chance. However, the Japanese government went on to still refuse. This resulted in the immediate death of 80,000 innocent civilians and hundreds of thousands more over time. How did this change the war? It simply brought it to an end. This is significant to not only the war, but after the war as well. The significance is how nuclear bombs can cause mass destruction. This is a preventing factor for future wars, knowing that if a country was to get into war and have bombs dropped on them, there can be serious destruction. The bombs don't only cause instant destruction, but they also have repercussions. Many people died even after months and days of the bomb dropping. nuclear radiation exposure cost many people their lives, even though they may have survived the initial bomb blasts. Were the bombs major turning points in World War II? Significant impact or a turning point? The bombings on Hiroshima and Nagasaki had lasting impacts that still come up today. They were devastating bombs which cannot be taken lightly. But although the bombs had major significance in changing the course of the war, they were not a major turning point. The bombs were used to end the war quickly and without harm to the US civilians. The use of the atomic bomb was not a turning point. It had many significant impacts to the war, such as the ending of the war, showing dominance and the threat, destruction that the atomic bomb has when deployed. The bombings on Hiroshima and Nagasaki might not have been major turning points on the war, but they have major turning points for future and other wars. As I mentioned above, the nuclear power of atomic bombs was demonstrated through the bombing, sending a worldwide message about the destruction and suffering they can cause. These bombs also started the world nuclear war race, as every country would want to have atomic bombs in their military compartment, even if they weren't going to use one. The United States had shown dominance, and now the other countries had to catch up. This is a major turning point that was caused by the events in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. After the deadly bombs were dropped by the US, the scientists who formed the bomb formed the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists. This was an organization which dedicated their time to alert the world about nuclear weapons. This shows how the events leading up to and in Hiroshima have had a significant impact on the future. These events also show how the bombings have been major turning points for future wars, since organizations like these have had to raise awareness for overuse or wrong use of such strong military weaponry. This is the first printed magazine from the organization with the iconic symbol Doomsday Clock. This shows how close humanity is to nuclear annihilation. The civil defense film Duck and Cover was meant to help and teach schoolchildren on how to protect themselves during a nuclear attack by instructing them to find shelter and cover. Along with rehearsals for disaster, this at least gave American citizens awareness. Again, from these sources, it is quite evident that events from the Hiroshima bombing had major impacts and reactions from nations. Things like these show how nations are preparing for nuclear attacks and have learned from the Hiroshima bombing the destruction, atomic bombs, and what they can do. Thank you.